Hello everyone, this is Scott Campbell with Morris Home Inspections. Haven't put together one of these standards of practice slideshows in a while, so I figured I should get back to it as I have a couple left to go. So here we go. South Carolina standards of practice. They are written by ASHI, the American Society of Home Inspectors. Today we will deal with HVAC. So first off, we'll talk about heating systems. What we need to be inspecting is, first off, we need to open readily openable access panels. So if they're sealed with tape or something like that, they're not readily openable. If they are screwed shut, I consider it readily openable. We need to inspect all the installed heating equipment, the vent systems, flues, and chimneys, and the distribution systems. We also need to describe the energy sources and describe the heating systems themselves. The way we do that is in our reports, is with our styles and materials list. So we'll have the heat type, which is in this area, typically either natural gas furnace or a heat pump. Your energy source will be natural gas for a furnace or electricity for a heat pump. Then we talk about number of heating systems, and you see there it says excluding wood. So we will add fireplaces into this if they are gas fireplaces, not if they are solid fuel. We'll list the heat system brand, the ductwork, filter size, filter type, and then we'll list the type of fireplace it is, propane or natural gas, vented or non, or solid fuel, and how many operable fireplaces are on the premises. At the beginning of our report, we want to identify the brand, tonnage, BTU, age, refrigerant type, minimum, maximum breaker amperage of the heat pump, as well as distribution systems and fireplaces. So at the beginning of the heating section, you'll see these pictures, the heat pump, the furnace, the label which we can pull your age, the tonnage of the unit or the BTU. We'll look at the min and maximum breaker amperage, and I'll talk about that here in a minute, and the refrigerant type. So refrigerant type is important because in 2010, R22 was discontinued, and the new refrigerant type that is used is R410A. If you have an old heat pump or air conditioning heat system that uses R22, that could be a lot more expensive if you have a refrigerant leak, because all the R22 that you're getting these days is recycled. Then we will typically make a comment on the functionality of the heating system by taking measurements at the return and supply registers. Typically it needs to be above 14 degrees. In this case, you see a 76.8 degree temperature at the return and 118 at the supply. With that big of a differential, you have to assume it's probably a furnace or a heat pump that's in auxiliary mode. If it was just a heat pump, not in auxiliary mode, you would not have that high of an output temperature. All right, so here's some, but not all, of the defects that we find on these things. So what you're looking at here is a metal flue pipe, a chimney from a fireplace, okay? Now, metal flue pipes require a 2-inch clearance to combustibles. There's almost always a label on there that specifically states that. Combustible materials can be insulation, which in this case is what you're seeing here. The wood building components, what I'm not showing you here is at the top of this flue pipe, it's actually touching the plywood roof sheathing as well. And a lot of times you'll see asphalt, fiberglass shingles, or underlayment in contact also. This cellulose, it really needs to be moved away. All right, then here again, now this one is in a new construction. All right, so this is a Class B vent from a natural gas furnace. It's another metal flue pipe, right? A lot of these Class B vents will have a label on them stating they need 1 inch of clearance to combustibles. What you're looking at here, and it's kind of hard to see, but this black substance here is your underlayment, and your asphalt fiberglass shingles are sitting directly against that flue pipe. That that's a no-no. So obviously we're going to point that out. Again, brand new construction. Here we go. This is an issue we see on heat pumps, on air conditioners sometimes, especially if they're older. You know, you're looking at your liquid line filter dryer, you're starting to see some decomposition, some rust there. What can happen there is your refrigerant can leak out. And again, if you have that R22, once you get this replaced, the filter dryer replaced, that refrigerant can be quite expensive to replace. Here you're basically looking at a supply duct in a crawl space. So when they were doing some work down here, someone had damaged this ductwork, right? So you can see it's open in the crawl space. So your conditioned air is being let out into the crawl space, which means you have a reduced flow into the interior of your home, so you're not getting proper heating and cooling. Plus, if you happen to get some sort of animal or what have you down in your crawl space, they can get into those ducts and cause even more issues. And I mentioned looking at the minimum and maximum fuse amperage rating on your heat pump or your air conditioner and comparing it to the breaker that's in the panel. So what you're looking at here is your heat pump is telling you that the maximum amperage for your breaker should be 25. The minimum should be 14.7. And then you're looking at a breaker that's 30. So what typically happens is you'll have an older system replaced by a newer system. The older system was not as efficient, used more of an amp draw than the newer one, and so once they replaced the system, they did not replace the breaker. So you don't have adequate protection, and if you do get the unit damaged, it could possibly void your warranty because you're not following the manufacturer specifications. All right, so here's the things that we are not required to inspect. Interiors of vent systems, flues, and chimneys that are not readily accessible, heat exchangers, humidifiers, dehumidifiers, electric air cleaning and sanitizing devices, heat recovery and similar whole house mechanical ventilation systems. And number 5 says heating systems using ground source, water source, solar, and renewable energy technologies. Ground source, you know, geothermal. Water source, we see like boiler systems. We see in like high-rise condos and stuff like that. I will inspect those. Solar and renewable energy technologies, I haven't seen any of those down here yet, but as far as geothermal and water source, I will inspect those units in so much as they're in the house. I'm not going to go looking for a boiler in a high-rise, all right? And then another thing that we are not required to do is determine the heat supply adequacy and distribution balance and the adequacy of combustion air components. All right, so let's move on to the air conditioning portion. We are required to inspect central and permanently installed cooling equipment and distribution systems, describe the energy sources and the cooling systems themselves. Again, we do that part by styles and materials. It's either a heat pump or an air conditioner. It's always electric. Your heat pumps and your air conditioners here are always electric. You can see the refrigerant type 410A or R22, the central air manufacturer, and then number of AC units only. That changes depending on whether it's a heat pump or a furnace air conditioner combo. Heat pumps, the exterior and interior units work in combination, so there is not an AC unit only. You can have 3 heat pump systems and you'll still have no number of AC units only. That pertains to when you have furnace air conditioning systems because they do not work in conjunction. AC is kind of a standalone. All right, then again, just like heat, we're looking for temperature differentials between the supply and returns of between 14 and 22 degrees. And some of the defects that we find that are pretty common, the disconnects for the air handlers in the attics are missing cover plates. The coils are dirty or damaged. This one we find a lot here, which is standing water in the condensation pan underneath the air handler unit. When your primary condensation drain clogs, what ends up happening is the condensation then empties into this pan and runs out of your auxiliary. If it sits in that pan too much, that pan will start to rust and you can get other issues as well. So typically, most of the houses here, you will find a auxiliary condensation drain coming out of the house high, like above a window or a door. They put it there so that you see it draining. Once you see it draining, you know to call your HVAC guy to have him come and unclog those drains. We typically recommend to our clients that they sign up for a maintenance plan with a local HVAC company. Those companies will come out every 6 months, check to make sure your lines are blown out, because they do clog a lot here. And they'll check a number of other things, but that's the main key. We are not required to inspect air cleaning, electric air cleaning and sanitizing devices, determine the cooling supply adequacy and distribution balance. We don't inspect cooling units that are not permanently installed. So those little portable ones, I've actually had 2 in the last 2 weeks after not having seen any for a number of years. They're just little portable units that people have put in like their Carolina room. We don't inspect those most of the time because people take them with them. And then same with window units, we don't do those either. And then again, it talks about renewable energy technologies. And as I mentioned, I'll always look at a geothermal or a boiler system. So move on. That's pretty much it. So that's your HVAC. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. If you want to know more about the standards of practice and code of ethics in South Carolina, they are written by ASHI, the American Society of Home Inspectors. I put the link here. You can go look at that. I've also put my partner, who is our founder, Hamer. I put our email addresses on here and our website. So visit our website. Shoot me an email if you have any questions. And that's all for today. Have a good one.